Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome onto the program. Today on the show, in the second part of it, we will have computer and technology news. A lot of different things, including, you may have heard about the hackers that got into, I think it was like some kind of like anti-malware or some kind of system, like subsystem that is really widespread in business. And yeah, they've shut down massive parts of the global economy. And they were kind enough to lower their ransom for unlocking all these systems from $70 million to $50 million. So yeah, you know, hey, we can all breathe a nice sigh of relief as they are working with us. Sarcasm, obviously. There's that. There's this whole thing about Audacity. If you haven't heard about that, Audacity has been a longtime friend of the show, and they recently got acquired by a different company. And some policy changes have people on edge. So we'll talk about everything with that, all that and more. Tons of different topics that we can talk about. But in the first part of the show, that's our favorite because we get to have a guest. And today's guest, if you haven't heard of them, this is going to be the perfect show for you. We're going to talk all about the company, what it is they do, how they do it. Noopl. If you'd like to check it out yourself, Noopl.com, Noopl.com. Or, of course, over at computeramerica.com, we'll have a link after the program directly to the website. But hey, we recommend that you just stick around and hear it from the CEO himself, all about the company and what they can do for you. Okay, so obviously computeramerica.com. Once again, there you'll find links to the podcast, articles, show notes. If you can't catch us live on IRN, you can of course catch the podcast after the fact. All that and more, including contests, social media links, so on and so forth. Everyone, let's go ahead and bring on our guest and get started with today's program. So as I said before, today is going to be about, one of my favorite parts about technology is, of course, the ability for technology to, improve people's lives. We've been a long-time supporters of things like JAWS and accessibility programs and, accessibility and coding and making websites that are accessible to more and more people. And, there's vision impaired, there's hearing impaired, there's, of course, those that are physically impaired. But today, it's going to focus more on those who have trouble with, kind of audio. And if you've ever found yourself having trouble in restaurants or listening to television, or so many small indicators, well, hey, sit up and listen to today's program. So joining us today, as I said before, is the CEO of the company, Dr. Tim Trine. Doctor, welcome on to Computer America. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. And yeah, we hope that you're doing well. You had a great 4th of July. And how about we go ahead and get started with the obvious, which is a bit of background on yourself. Have you always been in technology, or is your background more medical? And a bit of background on Noopl. Where did the idea come from, and when was the company kind of started?
Sure. First, quick intro for me. I've been in the hearing aid space for more than 20 years. So my background, PhD, is in hearing science from the University of Minnesota. But even before that, got an early start working in a lab in Southern California at UCLA. Was my first exposure to the physiology and psychoacoustics of hearing, and that just kind of captured my imagination and my attention, and kind of went on from there. After doing my PhD, I was on the faculty at Vanderbilt University for a few years and started doing some research specifically with some hearing aid companies, and ended up spending the next 19 years at one of the so-called Big Five hearing aid companies. There are 5 companies now that own about 90% of the global market. Classic oligopoly, and Starkey Hearing Technologies is one of those. Worked at Starkey for 19 years. Left Starkey to really follow a passion towards startups and kind of disruptive technology. Went to a company called Eargo in the Bay Area. They just had their IPO about 7 months ago. And about a year and a half ago, joined Noopl as president and CEO. So very small startup, but with very disruptive technology. And that's kind of been that career path for me over the past 20 years or so.
Yeah. And thank you for the background. And then I believe you're about to get into kind of Noopl and where they started.
Right. So the founder of Noopl is a serial entrepreneur in ophthalmology, actually, and was working on sitting on an NIH grant review board, and started up a conversation with a colleague of mine, and sort of kind of several things collided. One, he had a dad his dad is still alive, 93 years old. Has state-of-the-art hearing aids, but is really, really frustrated with his ability to communicate in noise, particularly in crowded restaurants. Like many people, would simply just take his hearing aids off because they just can't perform in severe background noise. And so that, that irony, I guess, of wearing very high-tech hearing aids but not being able to communicate in noise, frustration, and the serendipity of meeting somebody within the hearing space that happened to be connected to the National Acoustic Laboratories, which is a center for excellence in Australia. All of those things kind of coalesced to kind of create the original vision back in 2015 for Noopl. Company was founded, licensed some technology initially, and started down the path.
Yeah, that's a perfect storm of a startup, and by the way, just your people over at Noopl were kind enough to kind of send a unit out to kind of test, play with, and kind of before the interview. So I have some hands-on experience. I'll try to throw that in whenever possible. But something that you said, I wanted a little bit of your point of view on this. You mentioned the Big Five and so few companies with hearing aids and that whole thing. I'm kind of curious, is that something that is kind of market competitiveness and, the ability for companies to kind of break into the market? They're having trouble with that, or let's face it, is hearing that hard of a problem to fix?
Well, that's a great question, because it is a very, very difficult problem. When I was at Starkey, there were many, many companies, big tech companies, that looked at this problem and assumed that they could come in and disrupt the industry. And they, many companies that you're familiar with, that tried and failed. And part of the problem is very ultra low power, technology, getting, all day wear and on a very tiny battery, and having both the cosmetic as well as the acoustic performance to solve a very, very difficult problem. Having said that, however, technology has matured dramatically over the past decade, and the industry is very, very ripe for disruption. Right? The reality is today, the vast majority of people who buy hearing aids have mild to moderate hearing loss. And yet, because of the structure of this industry, structure of the sales channels, they're paying on average over $4,000 for a pair of hearing aids. And unfortunately, for many of those people, they're spending that kind of money, and then their primary problem still doesn't go away. And their primary problem is hearing and noise. And so it's an unfortunate reality of having a sensory deficit, which is a very, very challenging problem, but at the same time, technology really not keeping up with what's possible. And it's kind of, and enter Noopl to really focus in on, rather than focusing in on hearing aids per se and covering the vast array of hearing losses, we wanted to take an approach where we're focused on a problem, and that problem is hearing and noise. So in addition to people with hearing loss that are challenged with hearing and noise environments, over 62 million Americans today admit that they're challenged in noisy environments. I have perfectly normal hearing, but you get me in a crowded restaurant, and like many people, I struggle in that environment. And so we're really focused on that, simple solution, and with a device and combined with AirPods Pros that will, solve the problem in a very elegant way.
Yeah, and of course, that kind of background noise can come from other people, crowded restaurants, televisions. Like there's home settings and outdoor settings, which is I'm very curious about kind of your team's approach to that, because there's so many different kinds of background noise, and we're going to talk about your use of kind of AI, machine learning in the background to just reduce the noise, make sure you want to hear the things that are important, like people's speech. This was not easy, and I'm sure that it took a lot of, and I'm sure that it's still ongoing to train this device and train this app to discern the proper noises. I think that, and I'm trying to think the best way to kind of tackle this. Let's talk about how, and I hate to leave you with just how, but let's start with product and how you actually use it, because there's a little bit of setup process, and we can also branch that into what devices this kind of works with. But let's say I'm a new Noopl owner. I go there, I buy the device, it shows up at my door. What are the next steps to start using this device?
Sure. So let me just show you the device here. So that is the Noopl device, and I catch the lighting angle here better. You can see the front of the device. And that little design on this side hides 3 microphones that are spaced at about 12 millimeters apart. And that's at the core of the design, right? The fact that we have these 3 MEMS microphones and the signal processing associated with that to really zoom in and provide a very narrow focus for the device. So the setup is relatively straightforward. We have, to get the auto steering, which I'll come back to in a moment, to work, there's a single one-time setup of changing the default microphone for your AirPods Pros from automatic to left, and that allows us to leverage the head steering information from the AirPods to steer this directional array. So other than that one-time setup, you plug the device in, as I have here, and it's asking me to do a firmware update, which I'm going to ignore. and now I'm connected.
Yep.
And it's we're pretty pleased with the simplicity of the user interface. And I'm trying to get this in the right spot on the screen. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Lighting, but we try to keep a very, very clean interface. So we have this steering vector, which right now is set to wide. As I set it to narrow, you see that it's a much narrower beam, and we've tried to communicate the width of that beam by this shaded region up here. And if I'm in manual mode, you can steer this beam with your finger. If I pop my other AirPod in and switch back to automatic mode.
And then, so obviously after you kind of do that, you can explain why that might be useful in, beam forming and that whole thing. So, but yeah.
Sure. So now that I'm back to automatic in narrow mode, as I turn my head
very cool
back and forth, you'll notice that that beam is steering based on where I'm looking. And that's at the heart of this noise reduction algorithm. So we have this extremely narrow beam that provides about a 15 dB improvement in the signal to noise ratio. Just put that in perspective, every dB of improvement in signal to noise ratio is about a 9 to 10% improvement in your ability to hear speech and noise, right? So it's a fairly dramatic, if you listen to some of the demos that we have online, you go from essentially hearing nothing to hearing everything perfectly. And so the beauty is really about the simplicity of this interface. So once you're in auto steering mode, now wherever I look, that's what comes into auditory focus. And I can hear at a crowded restaurant based on, just setting this on the table and really leaving it alone and really letting that go into the background, focus on the people at the table, focus on the conversation, and just take advantage of this very significant signal to noise ratio benefit. So that's at the heart of the use case. In addition to the directional beamforming, we also, as you've mentioned, have a AI-based noise reduction algorithm that runs on the phone rather than on our device.
Was that for privacy reasons, or is that just to keep the cost of the actual device kind of low or affordable?
It's really everything we've done is to really keep this at a very affordable price, right? So we're priced at $199. And you compare that to traditional hearing aids, which, as I've already mentioned, is on average $4,000. So if you already have AirPod Pros, it's $199. If you have to buy some new AirPod Pros, you add another couple $100 for that. But that's far more accessible. And so everything we've done is really to keep the cost of this unit down substantially. But the AI-based noise reduction runs on the phone, and it's just got a simple slider to adjust the magnitude of that noise reduction. So as I slide that up, that'll maximize the noise reduction. And slide it down, you can just dial that in specific to the environment. And as you've mentioned, we've taken a lot of time and effort to continue to create recordings of specific environments so that we get the statistics of the various background noises, whether it's a bar or a restaurant, somebody's bridge club. All of those have unique characteristics in terms of the statistics of that noise. So as the algorithm gets better and better and learns over time, those noise reduction algorithms will become more effective.
Right. Yeah. And I can even, I'll actually let you kind of choose, here on your website, which again, people can go to check out for themselves, but you have airport, restaurant, street, supermarket. We can actually play that on the air and, kind of toggle the Noopl technology on and off. So do you have a favorite example out of these four?
I think either the airport or the restaurant, all of them are pretty effective, but
right.
Playing it and I'll shut up.
But Dave, I just have to know, are you going to do the merger?
So obviously when it was kind of reduced and, this is actually like 10 seconds long, so I could probably play it kind of uninterrupted.
Nice to meet you all again. But Dave, I just have to know, are you going to do the merger?
So that would be a restaurant, conversation. And I'm sure that you recorded that, just in day-to-day life. And then, of course, here's with Noopl
nice to
on.
see you all again. But Dave, I just have to know.
And I'm not hearing that really well come through. I'm not sure if others are.
Yeah,
but,
and they actually are on the stream. I'm sorry to kind of leave you out of that, but yeah, go check that out if you weren't able to hear that. But yeah, a huge difference, and of course, just even looking at the visualizer, you can see that with and without, it's kind of all kind of one level, and then Noopl obviously strains out a lot of the other stuff. so many different aspects of this. Like, I feel like there were a couple of ways to kind of approach this, and you decided to go with something that plugged into the phone. Was there a reason for, talk about some of the design elements? Because again, looking at the device, there's little, I don't want to say suction cups, but little cupping kind of rubber things that cup over the microphone and the speaker. And then it, for anyone watching, you could see that it plugs into the bottom of your iPhone. Why that form factor? Why not like a Bluetooth microphone that you could set somewhere else separate from your device? Was that just what made the most sense, or kind of why is Noopl designed like this?
Yeah, so great question, and you're right. These couplers that reside between the phone and the Noopl device are really critical, right? I have a iPhone 12 Pro here without a case, right? And there's a specific coupler in the package that allows this to couple tightly to the base of the phone. And the reason that we did that was we're driving this acoustically. And the reason that we're driving it acoustically rather than coming over the Lightning port via USB or just driving via Bluetooth direct to the AirPods is because of latency, right? So the reason that we went acoustic first is that we assumed out of the gate that Live Listen, which is a feature in iOS, allows, which right now is the lowest latency Bluetooth connection to the AirPods, right? And the AirPods Pro. Reason that we're with the AirPod Pro is that those have the lowest latency BLE audio connection right now, right? Bluetooth 5.2, which we'll get into later, changes that, but there are no Bluetooth 5.2 phones out there yet, right? So for the time being, we're acoustically coupled so we can take advantage of this very low latency link. Right? Latency will kill, Bluetooth latency with live speech obviously is a major problem. And so we're under 100 milliseconds end-to-end latency from from our microphone input to the loudspeaker output in the ear, which in a noisy environment becomes completely transparent. Right, you're listening in a quiet environment, you can hear a little bit of that perceived reverberation, which is coming from that additional latency. But in a noisy environment, thankfully, that problem goes away, and that's why we did what we're doing. And move into the future. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I'm sure that people would really appreciate that, because it's kind of like watching a video with just a little bit of latency. Like if the audio doesn't match up with people's lips, it's very distracting and it's very hard to kind of follow. So I'm sure that if people were talking and you were to load it into Bluetooth and it took maybe a quarter of a second or half a second, I'm sure that would take people out of being in the moment and being able to talk.
Correct. And it's at typical Bluetooth latency can be anywhere from 250 to, in some cases, up to 400 milliseconds. At those sorts of latencies, you're completely unable to communicate because of the lag. Even the sound of your own voice with that much of a lag becomes a delayed auditory feedback that it disrupts your ability to even talk. Yeah. So let alone listen. So that's one of the huge improvements in Bluetooth was announced last year in January with the standard of Bluetooth 5.2 being adopted and being released. Unfortunately, Bluetooth 5.2 isn't out there in the field yet. There's some truly wireless headphones that are claiming Bluetooth 5.2, but until they have a device to transmit to them via this LC3 codec, which is part of the Bluetooth 5.2 standard, we're still stuck with 5.0 and earlier versions. Still incremental improvements, but Bluetooth 5.2 will really change the landscape dramatically.
And when 5.2 actually comes out, is that going to be a net benefit for you because you can start using more headsets? Is it, just the device that people buy today is just going to instantly get better when they upgrade their phone to that new device? What happens when 5.2 lands?
When 5.2 lands for us, it's a huge win, because that latency that is now about 100 milliseconds will be sub 20 milliseconds end to end, right? The added latency that we create from our signal processing is less than 3 milliseconds, right? So it's essentially negligible.
Yeah.
And so you think about how that changes everything. We move from having a great solution for hearing a noise to a great solution for hearing. So hearing in quiet also becomes part of what we can do with Noopl. So we're very excited about that.
I can definitely see why. Yeah, and by the way, just as kind of like a best practices or a use case, we were kind of playing around with it here at the office, and I believe in the instructions it said put it kind of midway between, let's say, the TV and yourself if you're just using it to like listen to TV or something. Where would your phone and this device go in a home setting, in a restaurant setting, at the I'm assuming at the airport it stays in your hand, obviously. Is there a way to kind of get improved quality or best practices when using the Noopl device?
Yeah, I mean, in a restaurant, in a crowded bar, within arm's length of where you're sitting, on the table, we recognize whether the device is sitting on the table versus in your hand. So we use an accelerometer to recognize that there's movement, and we optimize that directional processing for a handheld use case versus tabletop use case. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about setting it on the table is you can kind of forget about it and focus in on the people around you. So I typically put it, within arm's length of me, facing as it would naturally, right? So you don't have to aim the device, put the device forward. It will steer based on any orientation, frankly. So, and at a table, you're all within a meter or two of each other, so there's no significant hurdle there. Using it for the TV use case, obviously the best thing to do for using it as a way to hear the TV better is put it next to the TV. I would actually put it in omnidirectional mode and set it next to your TV loudspeaker, and then just forget about it and go about your day. And that's but that's a less of a significant use case than the noisy situations, right? Most people's homes are relatively quiet.
Right. No, and it makes perfect sense. And then, of course, we're having some questions in the chat here about AirPods only, and there's a lot of ways to take that. If you could address iOS, Android, and other headsets, because there are some very nice headsets other than AirPods. AirPods are, kind of a standard right now, but, other companies are catching up. Sure. And then there's also the idea of, other Bluetooth speakers or, just other devices in general that could play. So Android, is it coming? Are you working on it? And other headsets, are those also on the way?
Yeah, both are on the way. And so Android, we're working on that now. We actually have our next generation hardware is complete. So we'll be instead of passing the audio, we went with this acoustic coupling because of the advantages of live listen, but we found a workaround. So now we're passing, even for the Apple device, we'll pass the audio over the Lightning port directly to the phone. That improves the overall fidelity dramatically, and still takes advantage of that low latency pairing. Android is also it supports a USB-C connection, of course, so we can have Android. So we're working on the software now for Android. We expect to be done by this winter, end of this year. And then on the Bluetooth headset side, we're qualifying devices as they roll out. Unfortunately, Apple's got a big advantage thus far, right? So we're supporting the Powerbeats Pro. Mm-hmm. I guess if anybody's really willing to wear a AirPod Max in public, we support those as well. But I don't see that being a very viable use case. Right. But unfortunately, nobody else, until I think it'll be when Bluetooth 5.2 is supported. And thankfully, Android, I think it's Android 12 is in beta now, or is it 9? I can never keep track of the numbers. But Android has Bluetooth 5.2 support built in into the next release. So we're excited to, I'm hoping Samsung and others will introduce Bluetooth 5.2 radios into the handsets, into the cell phones, so we can take advantage of that, because the building blocks are all there.
And I think that's a really cool part of what you touched on this way before, which was it was a nice perfect storm of course getting the right people, starting the right company. You saw the need, or at least the founders of Noopl saw the need, and everything just kind of came together. It seems like the technology is now, it's already here. The product is obviously working, but the technology is just getting seemingly better and better year over year. So. And since we talked about Android, because you did mention the $4,000 devices, the cochlear implants, and other hearing aids, does your device kind of work with those as well? Is it strictly to? I'm assuming that you don't strictly replace them in all situations, but traditional hearing aids and other implants. How does your product kind of interface with those, or do they replace? Yeah.
No, it's a great question. It's definitely an augmentation for people with severe hearing loss and severe to profound hearing loss. Those are people that have to wear hearing aids all day, every day, right? And so, thankfully, most current hearing aids, modern hearing aids, are Bluetooth compatible, and most of those Bluetooth compatible hearing aids are also MFI, or made for iOS compatible. So if you have a made for iOS compatible hearing aids, we just work right out of the box. We'll stream directly to your hearing aids, via Noopl and the phone, and that'll be there for Android as well when we release Android. The surprise for us actually has been cochlear implant users. So there are MFI compatible cochlear implants. And some of our happiest customers right now are people with cochlear implants because, frankly, they don't have any solution in noisy environments, right? So they are essentially off the air when they're in a noisy environment, not able to hear at all. So this is this improvement in the signal to noise ratio that we can provide is a super solution for people with cochlear implants. The key thing there is to make sure that they turn off their ear level microphone, right? And that's true for hearing aids as well as cochlear implants. So most of the hearing aid manufacturers and cochlear implant manufacturers make that relatively easy within their own app to disable the ear level microphone when you have an accessory like Noopl plugged in, and it's a great solution for hearing and noise.
Right. And I know that I've been talking a lot about accessibility because, the idea of using technology to get people out there and get them, happier in everyday situations is kind of a no-brainer. But Noopl should appeal to pretty much anyone, even people in my personal life who are, young, in their 20s. They say that I've never been able to hear in crowded restaurants. If someone's across the table, I just can't operate in those settings. You even mentioned that you yourself have trouble with perfectly normal hearing. Hey, maybe you're just one of those people that can't do this. Noopl is for everyone, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting looking, we're just getting started, but it's interesting to look already at where our sales are coming from. And so we're seeing we have a big population of people over the age of 50 that are buying, but we also have another big population of people in their 20s. And so we're doing some market research on those customers right now to figure out, are they buying it for themselves? Are they buying it for one of their parents or grandparents? Exactly, who are those people? But as you said, many of us have problems hearing and noise. So this isn't restricted to people with hearing loss. And I think the other reality socially is that ear level headphones are becoming ubiquitous outside of just wearing them on the subway or listening to podcasts, right? People are wearing them as an augmentation today,
I was so surprised
socially over time.
Yeah, and sorry to kick off there, but I was just so surprised that it seemed like 1 year, Bluetooth headphones had been around forever, and then like the AirPods came out, and kind of that noise cancellation thing. Like I didn't realize, but like 1 year, people had headphones and whatever. The next year, everyone was wearing AirPods, and it was just shocking how quickly everyone did it. And if I can be completely honest, I never bought AirPods or AirPods Pros until I had to, kind of test Noopl. And I get it now. The noise canceling features and stuff like that in the transparency setting, they're amazing. Like they almost make you superhuman by themselves. But yeah, it's how common these things are, and now that everyone gets to wear them. Part of, and I'm going to wrap this around to, part of the problem with getting people to try hearing aids and hearing solutions is that there's some kind of stigma that people feel, it's like I'm too old, or, it's a sign of aging, whatever. They get self-conscious. This is just wearing headphones in your ears, which everyone is now doing.
Right. No, I mean, that's been a reality for the hearing aid market for forever, right? There's the average time between someone first being diagnosed with treatable hearing loss and when they first purchase a pair of hearing aids is on average 7 years, with a huge standard deviation, right? So, and part of what our objective is to shorten that, right? For those people with hearing loss, they typically start with a mild hearing loss where in normal quiet situations they really don't have a big problem. Right. Mm-hmm. So part of the issue is that, hey, I can hear well when I see the person and I'm communicating in quiet. Put that same person in any amount of noise, and suddenly they really, really struggle. So we'd like to, see that journey shorten dramatically by use of situational products like Noopl, where you just need a little bit of help, and thankfully, I think the social stigma of wearing an AirPod is far less than the social stigma of wearing traditional hearing aids. And we see that maturing.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I, kind of want to throw this at you, because you said that, Noopl's been working at this a long time and there are a lot of hurdles to cross. Are there any that kind of stand out to you, kind of joining the company and maybe people looking back and saying, this was one of the biggest challenges. This is what we do better than other people. What do you think is one of the bigger challenges that you've tried to address?
I think, frankly, the biggest challenge is the one we're facing right now, which is just getting the word out and getting people aware. It's, as a new company, you don't have any credibility until you get those first sales, you get those first testimonials, you get, people trusting that we actually are as disruptive as we say we are. So that frankly is probably the biggest challenge. There are always technical hurdles. Thankfully, from a hardware perspective, I was able to assemble just a world-class team, right? We're a very, very small team, but the engineering depth and breadth we have is just world-class. So I'm very, only once in my career prior to Noopl have I been able to get a hardware product from napkin to release in less than 12 months. And while we didn't get to market in 12 months, we were testing our marketable prototypes within 12 months, which is just a huge, huge milestone. And that in large part was due to all of the pre-work that happened before I joined the company, of getting, the work from the National Acoustic Laboratories really being mature, testing out hundreds of different form factors. So it made the decision making very easy for me to come in and say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and drive the product development path and make it as short as humanly possible. Right. And I think that's, it's just been fun. We've small but super talented team, which makes life pretty fun.
Yeah, and hey, I'm really happy that you were able to join us on the show, and hopefully, more and more people have heard about you. Will hear about you because, these devices and these breakthroughs. I feel like they really do happen with these small teams. Like you said, a lot of this market is dominated by established players that are, let's face it, charging thousands and thousands of dollars for their products, and the need to disrupt that with something much more affordable is probably very low. Like like the incentive to disrupt that market from the established players is probably very low. By the way, poking through your website there and kind of how this all works, I think we glossed over it a little bit, but I wanted to touch back. You can see it on the screen there. Chattable, I saw your press release back in March, I believe, of this year, that you have kind of partnered with them. What has partnering with Chattable AI 2.0 kind of done for Noopl?
It's a match made in heaven, frankly. It was, they bring that AI noise reduction algorithm to the table. So it was a I'll say the fastest integration from a negotiation and just team cohesiveness, and plus a very, very clear pairing, right? So the directional processing combined with, it was just a very complementary technology, right? They just snapped together perfectly. And again, extremely small team on Chattable's side with our small team allowed us just to work really, really efficiently. By the time we signed the license agreement, we had an SDK within 2 weeks, and a week later had it integrated. So
very cool.
It's just, it's because those two technologies complement each other so perfectly.
Sorry if the dogs come through. There might home offices are great because we have bears around here, and there might be a bear outside, which is always fun. But ignoring that, and hopefully he shuts up in a second. But so Noopl, the device, all that kind of thing, you can see it here on the screen. I'm trying to think if there's any kind of parts here that we haven't touched on. If you can think of any.
No, I think you've covered it really well. I think. We've talked a little bit about what's next. I think the key question that we get from people with they currently wear hearing aids, right? There are directional microphones in hearing aids, and people will say, well, I already have directional microphones. Why is this better? And it really is a night and day performance difference, right? So the amount of improvement you can get from ear level directional microphones, mainly because of the separation and the fact that it's 2 microphones rather than 3, is about a 5 dB improvement. We're offering a 15 dB improvement in intelligibility. And that it really is night and day. The demos that you see heard on our website and you heard earlier in this podcast are not contrived. They're very carefully constructed to be realistic situations with a person across the table at a normal listening distance and diffuse noise filling the space, which is what you experience in a restaurant. And so those benefits are very noteworty.
Yeah, and again, speaking from personal experience, we tried everything from casual conversation around dinner. I have not tried it in a kind of crowded social setting. Trying to avoid those still for now, but for television and things like that, I definitely did notice a difference and the ability to kind of tune things in like we've kind of mentioned, I've never really thought I had a problem doing that, but it was almost night and day, being able to, listen to the TV or things like that. Like there really was a notable difference. And I should kind of ask you this because you mentioned, getting word out about the company and you're working on a product too with the whole going over the lightning port. And I think you covered that well, but I should still ask you this. What is next? Is it, I feel like this is a product that would be good for kind of, maybe refining the physical hardware, or is it, the operating system is very clean. So I can't imagine how you'd improve that. What is next for Noopl?
So I think, and in the immediate term, one of the most frequently requested items we were getting from our customers is the ability to compensate for their hearing loss and or just change the frequency response of the instrument. So we've added a 2-band EQ, a bass treble control. We'll see that probably by the end of this week, released through the App Store and our next version of the software. If you think about the use cases related to a dramatic improvement in signal to noise ratio, obviously the big one is automatic speech recognition. So automatic speech recognition systems are mature and they work really, really well, but they fall apart in any amount of background noise and reverberation, right? So we have an app that we've been working on. We call it Noopl Notes. that you'll probably see sometime next year. Don't have time to get into it now, but if you think about the use case of a big signal to noise ratio improvement and how that would improve an automatic speech recognition algorithm, you can begin to see how that's a completely different channel, a completely different use case, but meaningful applications in automatic speech recognition.
Right. If you have a device that's already listening and think about all the things that you can do with your voice with digital assistants and things like that, then yeah, I could see how that would be a very natural progression for Noopl, which would be, hey, we're already getting the audio feed. Why not, do more with it? So yeah, that sounds like you have a lot of work cut out for you. Again, all of this is still developing. You and your team still have a lot of work to do. But hey, like you said, out of a lot of startups that kind of come here on the show, the fact that I can hold your product in my hand, that kind of sets you guys quite a bit apart from so many others. But again, I definitely enjoyed the product. We're probably going to do a write-up on it, and of course, if people want to find out more information, computeramerica.com will have a link to Noopl. Is your website the best place to go?
Absolutely. Noopl.com, Noopl.com.
All right, perfect. And everyone, we have been talking to Dr. Tim Trine. He is, of course, the CEO of Noopl. And Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. This was very enlightening.
Well, we appreciate having the time to talk to you and your audience.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So, yeah, and I think now we're going to be so rude and kind of end the meeting here, and we're going to finish out the hour on the show. But again, thank you for your time, and have a great one.
All right, you too. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. And
Bye-bye.
Everyone else, we're going to go ahead and do computer and technology news. That's brought to you by Computer America, and we'll go ahead and get that started. Here we go. Everyone, our interview ran long, but hey, that's perfectly acceptable. We actually enjoy when our interviews run long because that means that we got to really dive in deep on a product. And again, that was Noopl. If you miss any part of that, computeramerica.com, wherever podcasts are heard, really, you can, of course, listen to the show. And yeah, there you go. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into these stories. How about we start with, let's see, I think it was this one. The one that is holding companies ransom for $50 million. This is going to be a great one to start. We have a lot of great stories, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But let's go ahead and start with this one, where hackers reportedly lower the ransom from $70 million to $50 million. And this happened over the 4th of July weekend, so maybe people aren't all that caught up on it. But let's go ahead and talk about this thing that Reuters reports an affiliate of the gang told Jack Cable of the Krebs Stamos group they would sell a universal decryptor for $50 million. This is in connection to the Russian-linked ransomware gang known as Revil, Revil, has reported and, kind of holding hundreds of companies worldwide hostage. So they're not just looking to extort each individual company, they're looking to extort one big pot of money. And it's actually kind of funny. Here on the security blog, they kind of write that for all their big talk on their blog, I think this got way out of hand, they told the news outlet. He said the $70 million demand appeared to be the group's attempt to making the best of an awkward situation. Essentially saying that Cable told Reuters that he was able to contact the hackers by attaining a cryptographic key to the gang's payment portal. Reuters reports that it too was able to get through to the cybercriminal gang, who told the outlet that its monetary demand remained unchanged at $70 million, but we are always ready to negotiate. Essentially, they said that they were in over their head with this giant hack. Like, they didn't mean to capture this many systems, which is very similar to what happened with the not the Keystone Pipeline, the the Colonial Pipeline and the fact that it disrupted so much infrastructure, and that hacking group said, whoops, we didn't mean to do all that damage, but they still kept their demands relatively high. Now, the hack was carried out by through a breach in a Florida-based software company, Cassia, and most of the victims of the attack were Cassia's clients. The CEO declined to say whether he was willing to pay the ransom demand, and they told Reuters that he has been in contact with officials from the White House, FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security. Do not forget, before this, there was legislation working its way through the Senate that could make paying ransom illegal. Like, it could make paying ransom illegal whatsoever. And then, of course, there was the task force that was headed, I think, by the FBI and the White House to actually hunt down these people who are perpetrating these hacks. It's getting to be a real problem. And this is by far the biggest that we have seen to date. Now, they said that the CEO added that he was not aware of any nationally important organizations having been affected by the hack, saying, we're not looking at massive critical infrastructure. That's not our business. We're not running AT&T's network or Verizon's 911 systems. Nothing like that. They mentioned that, let's see. So speaking to Reuters, an affiliate of the Hacking Gang expressed regret over the hack impacting a kindergarten association in New Zealand, calling it an accident. However, when asked about the hack's impact on a Swedish grocery chain, the hacker told Reuters it's nothing more than a business. So, very clearly, there are humans on the other side of this whole equation. But just because they're human and just because they may regret some of the businesses that they affect, that does not mean that they aren't, still the bad guys, hacking people who they should not be hacking. So overall, they claim they're still at 70 million, but of course they're open to negotiations. Some say that they take 50 million. Other sources are just claiming that, these numbers are only going to go up instead of down. What is the solution to all this? And I'm obviously everyone's a target. Everything's a target. And it's not even so much what you do or how important you are. It's more how many people do you affect. And everything from a gasoline pipeline to payment systems in a grocery store to, so many others. Like, it's not even about precious data or anything like that. It's just pure disruption. And how much money is it worth to disrupt as many people as you can? And that seems to be the new motto for these hackers. It's, hey, disruption, disruption, disruption. So very unfortunate to hear. And let's go ahead and talk about this. So let's see. I think our next story that we're going to do is Nintendo. Why not? Let's mix it up a bit, talk about some hardware. Nintendo, if you hadn't heard, well, they came out with a new system. They had a whole launch party, trailer, all that good stuff. And we'll go ahead and give you the short and skinny of it. But Nintendo's new OLED Switch costs $350 and arrives October 8th. So gearing up for the holidays. OLED was was really the big upgrade, and I think it also sports an Ethernet port, if I'm not mistaken. It does a couple of other things. It has a more sturdy stand if you wanted to stand it up on something. The screen is, I believe, a 6.2 inch. Let's see. So I think it was either a 6.2 or 7 inch. So it has a 7 inch. So not 6.2. 6.2 is the previous. This is a 7.0 inch screen with OLED display. Here's the problem though. It has 720p. It's not even 1080p or 1080i. It's 720p still, and I believe the best output in the dock, I believe, is still 1080p in docked mode. Not even 4K. 4K has been a standard and pretty readily available for the past, 2016, I think, was when it really started making its way into televisions. It's been 5 years, and this thing is still displaying at 720p, and I'm putting 1080p, and a lot of the games that are actually on Nintendo, people complain about lag and frame drops and things like that. I can't defend Nintendo for that, but I will say that if people are looking at this and going, wow, Nintendo really underdelivered in the hardware department, everyone would tell you, no, duh. Nintendo's never really been about the most cutting edge hardware, at least not since the GameCube or the Dreamcast. They've been more about hardware that kind of gets the job done, and hopefully, something that looks decent. This is a very clear upgrade from the previous Nintendo Switch, which is still getting sold out left and right. And for people who are willing to drop an extra $100, they're going to get a clear improvement over the over last year's model of Switch. So I'm not really all that concerned about people saying that the hardware, kind of frankly sucks and Nintendo could do better. Yeah, Nintendo could do better, but they're Nintendo and it's going to sell well regardless. Obviously, you can ask for 4K in docked mode. You can ask for 1080p when it's just the main screen. You could ask for smaller bezels. You could ask for kind of cheaper hardware for what you're actually getting. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what people were expecting. I mean, this was a natural evolution of the Switch because they came out with the original Switch and then they came out with the Switch Lite, which was, much, it was like $100 cheaper, $50 cheaper, whatever it was. Now this is the step up. If you're looking for any kind of notable hardware improvement, that will probably have to wait until the next generation of hardware. The good news is that that's probably coming sooner rather than later. The Nintendo Switch came out, I think, in like 2017, I think. 2017. So this technology is already 4 years old. If you're expecting like a lifespan of like 5 or 6 years old, probably the next iteration that we hear of will either be an update to the original Switch or it will be just brand new hardware, which is always exciting from Nintendo. But Nintendo's never been the best hardware. They've never been the most affordable hardware. Yeah, it's just, hey, if you want to play Nintendo, you got to buy their hardware. And that's really all it comes down to. So not the best hardware, but hey, at least it is something. So with that being said, I wanted to address one more before we go too much further. And let's talk about Audacity. They had the that joke is too easy. I'm not even going to make it. Audacity, for those who don't know, it's really, really good software. It's software that the community has been using to edit audio and kind of manipulate audio for years. It's an open source project. It's always been free, and it's been highly regarded as just kind of the Swiss Army knife of audio editing. It was free, it was intuitive, it worked well, the community had all the rights to it. It's great. Well, Audacity had a new owner, and that's when I believe and I'm trying to think of the company that actually bought Audacity. But the point is, much like Malwarebytes or any of these other companies that used to be free, new owners come in, they spruce it up a bit, and then they go, okay, let's start turning a profit on what is essentially an open source client. One way to do that, instead of putting a price tag on an open source project, which I'm sure would not have flown very well because, hey, other people can make their own versions of Audacity that is not paid for. So instead, they went in and said that they changed the terms of service so that they could collect what they said were analytics, and a lot of people kind of ran with it. In outrage culture, being outrage culture, they said, whoa, this is now essentially spyware if it's going to be tracking what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, on what computer, blah, blah, blah. And they took some other statements from the terms of service, which are actually pretty standard legalese, such as, if we are served with a warrant from a judge, we will honor that request for data. or, we will cooperate with law enforcement. Not many companies out there would take a stand and say, we don't associate with any government, and we will reject all claims, and we will fight everything tooth and nail, especially not for a company that has just purchased Audacity. Again, with a lawful court order, they're going to cooperate with law enforcement, is essentially what they were saying. Everyone else took that as, you're going to be collecting my data, sharing it with law enforcement, and now you are essentially spyware. We don't like that. And this article from Ars Technica, which we're going to link in the show notes, goes into exactly why Audacity is not spyware. Now, with that being said, they say that the May 7th update states that telemetry is strictly optional and disabled by default. And they mentioned that the telemetry only works in builds made by GitHub CI from the official repository, and that anyone compiling Audacity from source will be given a CMake option to enable the telemetry code. By that option, and therefore building the telemetry functions would be off by default. Essentially, you have to even opt into the data collection, and it's really not... Again, the feeling that I got from this, and I think a lot of people should as well, is that more and more free software is using analytics to kind of pay the bills, and right now the best way they can do it is by saying, oh, it's opt-in, don't worry about it, we'll find ways to monetize. It's something to watch, absolutely, but the community response has definitely been overblown, and it's really hard to see, because Audacity really is an amazing program. Like, I even have it installed on my computer. We have access to much better audio editing, or much more expensive audio editing software, but Audacity just works, and hey, it still does. So everyone, that's about it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into Computer America. If you'd like to hear more, computeramerica.com, past shows, future shows, articles, reviews, all that and more. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. We hope you had a great 4th of July weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Bye, everyone.